The New York Islanders have two players on expiring contracts who are most likely to be traded, and right now they both have one other thing in common. They're struggling big time on the ice. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Wow, so much to talk about on today's show, but we're going to start with this. There are two Islanders players right now who are both on expiring contracts, who are both among the most likely players that the team can and should trade away at or before the NHL trade deadline, which, by the way, is March 7th. And these two players, Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri, well, they have a bunch of things in common. But in addition to the fact that both of them are on expiring contracts and are most likely going to be traded, they're both also slumping big time. And, you can speculate a little bit that the fact that their contracts are now expiring could be part of the reason why they are not producing as they have been in recent years or even recent weeks up until now. Brock Nelson hasn't scored in 17 straight games. Keep in mind, he's had 34, 36, and 37 goals in the last 3 seasons. And right now, he remains stuck, without producing on that level. And here we are at the halfway mark of this season, and Brock Nelson has 10 goals, 11 assists, 21 points, and he's a -3. He's on pace to only score 20 goals and let's say 42, 43 points. Those are not Brock Nelson-like numbers. Now, I don't think it's going to have a major effect on his trade value because Brock Nelson is considered, according to multiple sources, one of the, if not the top player available as a rental. And if you think about it, to be able to bring in a second line center who has back-to-back 34, 36, 37 goal seasons, a guy who is still, in his mid-30s, but, not like 39 or 37, he's 33, on an expiring contract, and a guy who's got playoff experience and leadership, I think a lot of teams would love to bring in a Brock Nelson to add scoring depth, power play help, and just experienced play for their middle six. I think Brock Nelson would be almost ideal. And look, if you want to work out an extension with Brock Nelson, certainly any team acquiring him could do that. If you don't, he's a rental, you move on, and it's Brock for, 2 months, 3 months, if your team goes all the way to the, deep into the playoffs, and then no more. The other player is Kyle Palmieri. Palms also slumping big time. Now, Palmieri is streaky. He has always been a streaky player. A lot of goal scorers are. And, maybe in the first 20 games or so of this season, Kyle Palmieri was one of the most consistent players on the Islanders roster. In fact, if you go all the way back to last year, and when Patrick Waugh was hired and Lane Lambert was let go, Kyle Palmieri was one of the, if not the most consistent and productive players on the Islanders. And yet, in the last 18 games, Palms has exactly two, count them, two goals. Now, again, both Palmieri and Nelson are roughly the same age. Palmieri had a 30-goal season last year, tying his career high. From an Islanders perspective, this is unfortunate. The fact that these guys are slumping and struggling. Better to have them do it now than in, let's say, mid-February to late February when we're even closer to the trade deadline. I mean, let's face it, if both of these guys return to form and, score a goal, 2 goals every 5 games, let's just say, for the second half of January into February up until the trade deadline, again, their value recovers. If they were going through these slumps right before the deadline, that could be a bigger problem. So hopefully it doesn't lower their value. And I don't think it will. It's always a supply and demand thing. And when you got guys who are last year 30-goal scorers, they're going to be in demand. Now, from an Islander standpoint, obviously the question is, does Lou Lamoriello pull the trigger on these trades? And there are 2 other players who are also, possible trade bait, although I think these are sort of the next tier down, and that is J.G. Pageau, and number 1, and Anders Lee, number 2. And why? Well, Anders Lee is red hot right now. He's 33, 34, but again, he's having that bounce back season. If the Islanders are truly committed to a retool or a rebuild, Anders Lee's value will probably never be higher than it is right now. And you would probably maximize your return and save at least some, if not all, of that $7 million cap hit next year if you can move Anders Lee. I know he's your captain. I know what he means to this organization. I know what he's given to this organization. But if you accept that this is a retool, then this would be the right time to move on from Anders Lee. And again, similarly to Pageau, prior to the playoffs, a team looks for guys like J.G. Pageau, a guy who could be second power play, who can kill penalties, who's a solid defensive center, who is excellent on faceoffs, who can move up to the second line in a pinch if you need him to. He can check. He's got the playoff experience. He's not too old. Again, both Lee and Pageau have 1 more year after this season left on their contracts. And Lee, as we mentioned, kind of, very much red hot. Pageau on pace for roughly 19, 20 goals this year if he can maintain the pace he's got. And I think he won't, only because now with everybody healthy, now that you have Anthony Duclair back in the lineup, now that you have Matthew Barzal back in the lineup, Pageau is probably going to see less time on the ice with Bo Horvat and Brock Nelson and some of the other top 6 guys, but still, he is a valuable tool. So, Pageau playing solid, Lee red hot, leading the team in goals, leading the team in points, right now on pace for like 36, 37 goals. If you get a good offer for Anders Lee, even if you have to retain, half of his salary next year, clear $3.5 million off the board, off the cap, and get some picks or prospects or younger players for him, I think it would be a smart move. But again, it comes back to this. What is Lou Lamoriello willing and able to do? A lot of these players have either no trade clauses or modified no trade clauses where, they could list 15, 16 teams that they're not willing to go to and that they can't be traded to. But I think for some of these guys who are on the, getting older, getting on in their careers, an opportunity to play for Dallas, Toronto, Vancouver, teams with a more realistic chance of making a long playoff run, that might be appealing enough for them to waive a modified no trade or full no trade clause, and it might help the Islanders retool. And I'm going to say this, and I think this is important, because of the timing of everything, the way contracts are coming off the books, the years left, the no trade clause, the partial no trade clause, all of these factors. This year, the next 6 to 7 months are a huge, huge crossroads for this hockey team, for this organization. It is a chance to pull yourself out of the muddy middle, even if you have to take one step back to take 2 steps forward. And hopefully you rebound and you're able to get back to being a more legitimate contender in a year, 2 years, not 5 or 6. But if you don't make these moves, if you double down, if you re-sign some of these guys to 3, 4, 5-year contracts with a no trade clause, et cetera, boy, this team could get mired in the muddy middle or worse for a very, very long time. So these next 6 months are going to be vital for the future of this hockey team. And let's hope that Lou Lamoriello, ownership, and possibly if Lou retires or gets moved up to some other role, his successor, make the right decisions, because this is a critical time for the New York Islanders franchise. You need to bridge that gap between the older players you got now and the Cole Yzermans and the Danny Nelsons and some of the other prospects who are 2 or 3 years away. You want to get ready to contend when those guys start to make their impact. All right, more to get to on today's show. The Islanders made some roster moves on Tuesday. We will discuss those roster moves and injury updates and what it all means. We'll have that. Plus, today we have our weekly farm report on all things Bridgeport Islanders, and for our Islanders birthday of the day, a defenseman from Calgary, Alberta, who was with the Islanders for the 2005-2006 season. Let's see if you can guess who this player is. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are just better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's right, $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And look, Islander fans, it's not just the NFL playoffs. Check out the odds for the Islanders tonight, Thursday night, in Vegas. And hey, you want to bet on whether Matthew Barzal will score a goal, how many saves Ilya Sorokin will make. There are so many things to look at on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So the Islanders made some moves on Tuesday, and they were not surprising. They may be a little disappointing in some ways. And here's the deal. Hudson Fasching, not at practice on Tuesday. He is listed as day-to-day with an upper body injury. But the team also announced that Fasching, who did leave the game against Boston Sunday early and did not return, he is not going to travel with the team on this trip to Vegas and Utah. So Fasching definitely not going to play the next 2 games. The Islanders did also recall Grant Hutton from Bridgeport. Now, Hutton played in 12 games with the Islanders so far this year. He has 2 assists. Got sent down to Bridgeport in early December on December 10th. And, he may not even be in the lineup come Thursday night, but you got to have, 7 defensemen and Isaiah George, who suffered what appeared to be a concussion, but again, we don't know. He's also not making the trip to Utah and to Vegas. So basically, those are the moves. Oh, Simon Holmstrom, upper body injury. He has missed the last 3 games. He was placed on IR, and he will not travel with the team on this 2-game road trip Thursday and Saturday. And Mike Riley, who has been on LTIR, was moved to LTIR. He's been out of the lineup since November 1st. He has been skating, but again, no timetable for his return. I would be shocked if we see Mike Riley back on the ice in a game at any time this season. But, to me, again, the most important thing that Mike Riley recover and, be completely healthy for his personal health. And then hopefully he'll be able to play hockey again when he is cleared. But Mike Riley from IR to LTIR, Simon Holmstrom to IR, and Hudson Fasching out. So Matt Martin ends up stepping in to the 4th line to skate with Pierre Engvall and Kyle McLean. That was a line combination at practice. Whether we see that combination again on Thursday night in Vegas, well, that remains to be seen. But those were the roster moves made by Lou Lamoriello and the New York Islanders. To me, the thing that hurts the most at this point, other than Isaiah George being out, because he has been so steady and so reliable, but unfortunately, I think the Islanders are going to miss Simon Holmstrom. And if you would have told me last year or earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, oh, yeah, Simon Holmstrom's going to be out and the Islanders are really going to feel his absence, I might have been surprised. But Simon Holmstrom, can you believe right now, Simon Holmstrom, even though he has missed the last 3 games, is 4th on the Islanders with 22 points. He's a +2 on a team with a very negative goal differential. And he has 9 goals and 13 assists. He's on pace for 19, maybe 20 goals in a season if he gets healthy and returns to the lineup. So, he still gives you the good positional play. He's solid in his own zone. Again, not a physical player per se. Only has 10 hits in 37 games, but gives you a lot of other things. And his offensive confidence is growing. So hopefully Simon Holmstrom is able to recover quickly and can get back on the ice soon. But his loss, I think, is going to be felt. And, the other thing about Simon Holmstrom, he is versatile. You could play him on the first line in a pinch. He's not at this stage of his career, really a first-line player. But, for a game or two, you could put him on the first line. He'll kill penalties. He's ideally suited for the third line, can easily fill in on the second. Probably because of his lack of physicality, not ideal for a fourth line guy, but he could play either wing. He can play on any line in a pinch. He can kill penalties. And now he's actually picked up his scoring a little bit. So, that is a big loss, as is Isaiah George. So now Dennis Cholowski and or Grant Hutton are going to get a few games to show what they can do. And don't be surprised, Cholowski was playing good hockey before he ended up being the seventh defenseman, and George just played so well. We'll see, what he can do with another opportunity. All right, more to get to on today's show. We have our weekly farm report on all things Bridgeport Islanders, plus our Islanders birthday of the day. All that still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. The energy and excitement were unforgettable. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite feature on the Game Time app remains the view from your seat. You go on the app and you get a panoramic view from your seat before you purchase the tickets, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from our hosts, Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Time now for our weekly farm report. We do this almost every Wednesday during the season, and we talk about all things Bridgeport Islanders, bring you up to date on what the team is doing, how some of the prospects are doing, and, what's happening with the team's AHL affiliate. The Islanders had two games, January 4th and 5th, since our last farm report. And unfortunately, it was not a very winning week for Bridgeport. On January 4th, they fell to the Rochester Americans by a score of 6-3. Alex Jeffries scored on the power play, but it wasn't enough. And, right now, just a struggling team. Now, the other goals, William Dufour and Liam Foudy. So that was good. Foudy now has a point in 4 straight games, 4 goals, and 1 assist in that stretch. After losing to the Rochester Americans, they then faced the Hartford Wolfpack. That's the Rangers AHL affiliate. And unfortunately, again, Bridgeport falling to Hartford, this time at home in Bridgeport by a score of 5-1. Brian Pino got the goal. That gives him 16 on the season. That leads the team. It was a power play goal, but it wasn't enough. Jakub Skarek made 28 saves, but again, losing 5-1, not what you were hoping for from Bridgeport. So Bridgeport goes 0-2. Brian Pino leads the team with 16 goals. He's tied for the team lead with Chris Terry. They both have 25 points. Terry only has 4 goals and 21 helpers. Alex Jeffries, 8 goals, 21 points in 28 games. Liam Foudy, 9 goals, 17 points in 30. Mark Gatcomb, 9 goals, 16 points in 32 games. Matt Maggio, 3 goals, 12 points in 28 games. William Dufour, 5 goals, 10 points in 29 games. And the leading defenseman right now, Travis Mitchell, with 11 points. Samuel Bolduc with 11 points. Mitchell, 4 goals. Bolduc with 3. The goaltenders, well, Jakub Skarek, 329 goals against and an 891 save percentage, but that's only good for a 4-10-1 record with a team like Bridgeport that is struggling mightily right now. If you look at the standings, Bridgeport remains in 8th place in the Atlantic Division of the AHL. They are 7-21-2-2, 2 overtime losses, 2 shootout losses. That gives them a point percentage of .281, which happens, unfortunately, right now to be the lowest point percentage in the AHL. Hopefully, this week upcoming will be a better one. They do have 2 games this weekend, one on the road, one at home. Friday night, 7:05 Eastern Time start. The Islanders will visit the Providence Bruins. And then Sunday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time, it'll be the Lehigh Valley Phantoms visiting Bridgeport. And if you want to see some of the Islanders' future players, prospects, want to see them before they reach the island, you can get tickets for games at Bridgeport, or you can watch both home and road games on AHL TV. So again, struggles on the farm right now for the New York Islanders organization. And hopefully that changes soon as well. The organization needs some change and some refreshing, let's put it that way. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And Tuesday was the 48th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Brent Sopel. Sopel, a native of Calgary, 6'1", 201 pounds, a 6th-round pick of the Vancouver Canucks back in 1995, made his NHL debut in 1998-99 with Vancouver, stayed with the Canucks up until 2003-2004, played for the Islanders in 05-06 for 57 games, had 2 goals, 27 points, and 64 penalty minutes, got traded to the Kings, had a second stint in Vancouver, played for the Blackhawks, won a cup in Chicago in 2009-2010, and then played for the Atlanta Thrashers and Montreal Canadiens before going over to the KHL for 4 seasons at the end of his career. Sopel played in 659 career NHL games, 44 goals, 218 points, 309 penalty minutes, add 4 goals and 18 points in 71 playoff games, none of those with the Islanders. One of his better games as an Islander, how about October 20th, 2005, Islanders hosting the New York Rangers at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Kevin Weeks, the goalie for the Rangers, he did play for both the Islanders and the Rangers, and the Devils for that matter. Rick DiPietro, the goalie for the New York Islanders. And in this game, with the Islanders up 2-0, Brent Sopel sets up Mark Parrish for a power play goal. Alexei Zhitnik, the other assist. That made it 3-0 Islanders just 2 minutes and 47 seconds into the game. But the Rangers did manage to come back. They made it 3-2 on a couple of goals by Jaromir Jagr. Aaron Asham and Martin Ruchinski traded goals in the second period. But then in the third, Brent Sopel, our Islanders' birthday of the day, sets up Mark Parrish on the power play for another goal. Alexei Zhitnik, another assist. That made it 5-3 Islanders. The Rangers added another goal by Jagr with 5 minutes and change left, but the Islanders held on. Rick DiPietro, 26 saves. For our Islanders' birthday of the day, Brent Sopel, he had the 2 assists. They both came on the power play. He had 2 shots on goal and was on ice for 23 minutes and 12 seconds. So Brent Sopel is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, we are back tomorrow. We will have a full preview of Thursday's game against the Vegas Golden Knights, so make sure you join us for that. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, please email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So please join me for some instant insight and analysis. And it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.